welcome to another episode of the Courageous Influence Talk Show, where we have courageous conversations that help build people of courageous influence. I'm your host, Alex Cuttiford, and I'm joined by my mate and pastor, Caleb Dwyer.
Hey Al, how you doing?
I'm doing very good, mate.
Awesome.
How's your week been?
It's been a great week,
Yeah.
full of highs and lows and everything in between, but a good week. Really good week.
Yeah, I'm in the murk this morning because the little beep beep Barina's broken down. So.
Oh, I did feel when I pulled up after you this morning, which was nice after last week, and I was like, "Ooh, we're interviewing the mafia this morning."
Yeah, I've got my black jacket on. I'm in the black murk. Look out!
It was either that or working with golden tonsils.
Mate, so I thought we might just jump straight into our readings of Mark this week.
Yes.
So sort of looking at 13 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
Has anything been standing out to you this week?
Yeah, look, this week I want to share something that's probably a bit more devotionally than some of the others, but just something that really grabbed my attention, and it was in Mark 14, reading 26 to 42, and verse 36. It's Jesus in the garden praying, and he says, he prays that famous prayer, "Yet not what I will, but what you will."
Yeah.
And at the fall, humanity chose our will, and so much of life is this battle, between my will and surrendering to the will of God. And there's so many thoughts around that, because certainly humans can get involved and manipulate that idea. And really, it's not about God's will at all. It's just about another human's will.
Yeah.
And they're calling it God's will.
Yeah.
And I think that the church is much more cautious around that than maybe we used to be, which I think is a healthy thing and a good thing. But still on a very personal level. And even me as a pastor, because I don't ever want to be manipulating people's will, I want to make sure that I'm directing people towards God. And hey, what's God got for you in this? And leaving people space to even make mistakes.
Yeah.
Or do things that I can see might not be the wisest choice, but staying in their world and championing them and allowing them to go on that journey, because it's so much more important that someone matures in their faith to learn to hear from God, to learn to choose to read his word and obey his will, not obey Caleb's teaching or decrees. And really that's my job as a pastor. It's to help them grow into maturity in their relationship with Christ. So I think that's something that is great. But then on a personal level, there is that challenge of like, oh, wow. And I was thinking, there's a lot of talk inside church these days about what Jesus did as a man and what we should also then be able to do. And I think that some of that gets a little out of kilter, where people have an undeveloped Christology, maybe an over-realised eschatology can get us into the weeds a bit about just thinking, well, everything Jesus did as a man, therefore I should be able to do all of it. I think there's some bigger theological questions to ask around that concept, but it's still an important filter to look at and consider. And so what challenged me as I was reading this week was, wow, so often when I'm thinking about Jesus like that, it's about the stuff he did, the miracles, and so on. But I thought, I wonder what it would be like if I just brought it right back to that. Like, Jesus as a man demonstrated for us the ability to lay down his will for the sake of others and to be obedient to Christ. That faith really is radical obedience in action, even when it doesn't seem like the smart choice. That's often where faith really hits the road. And so for me, it was like going, wow, okay, Jesus demonstrated, he was the first man that broke the power of human will, if you like. We no longer had to be dictated to by this thing, that our need to be right, our need to be in control, our need to do it our own way. He broke that. And I want to see that in my life.
Absolutely.
And so it's just this really challenging thing of maybe not discounting the other things that Jesus did and having a desire to pray for people and seek healing and all of that. That's great. But maybe there's more fundamental question underneath that of, wow, am I following his example and the power that he demonstrated for us to be able to surrender our will to Jesus and just live an obedient life?
Yeah, that radical surrender is definitely something that stands out amongst Jesus' life. And I remember coming to the realization that Jesus found his power for all of that stuff in that surrender. It didn't come before the surrender, and that when he, and in that prayer, it talks about him, him surrendering his will, and it might not be in Mark, but in one of the goals, it talks about the angels coming and strengthening him. And that happens after he says, "But not my will, but yours be done." You know, and it's like that surrender is what brings the empowerment to bring him through the trial that he's facing. Yeah, and it's definitely something that can't get lost in faith. Is that I often think of it as in faith, surrender precedes faith. Like, when we bring ourselves to a place of surrender, that's where faith can grow, and where God can actually really start to do something with us.
Awesome.
I got a giggling producer.
A giggling producer. This
Cackling Jack.
Cackling Jack is back. We do enjoy having our producer around.
Yeah, no, that's good.
But giggling producer, that's the first time for everything.
All good. We're nice and relaxed in the Courageous Influence
Absolutely.
Talk show. Yeah. Was there anything else that...
No, I'm keen to hear what you got out of it this week, Al.
So one of the things that I was looking at was the lady that brings the jar of perfume to Jesus' feet and worships him with that radical worship.
Yep.
And just the interactions that were happening there. So there was, there's a few people at the house that Jesus is at, and they're, having a meal together.
Yes.
And then this lady's come to his feet, broken this perfume over him, and starts to extravagantly pour out her heart to him.
Yes.
And the people that were there actually start to rebuke her, and saying, this is such a waste. You could have sold that and got a year's wages and given it to the poor. And it's interesting. So then Jesus sort of says to them, no. She's done what she could.
Yep.
And I'm not going to be here forever. And this is what she can do for me right now in this act of worship. The poor is always going to be there. And he says to them, you guys could always help out the poor.
Right.
And so there's all these different interactions going on. And so it had me this thinking about the conversation around a sort of religious spirit or religious attitudes. But the reality is, very quickly, like we've talked about in previous episodes, how we never want to assume the position of the bad guys in the context of the story.
Yep.
But the way that works out in the principles that have been taught there from the people with the poor attitude, all of us land in that category at different times, no matter which camp you land in.
Right.
And so one of the a modern day context could be a Hillsong conference. Cost millions of dollars to pull off. Now, someone could come to that with a religious spirit of going, what a waste of money. You could have spent $3 million on, feeding kids in a country that don't have food. And that would, and you could easily say, yeah, no, that's a fair enough statement.
Yes.
But then at the same time, you can't discredit a moment of extravagant worship where we've decided to give an absolutely put on something massive for God to bring together a whole bunch of Christians to worship God in that setting. The flip side to that is someone could be approaching something like a massive Hillsong conference, say it's someone within it, pulling it off, going, I just need to pull off something big enough for it to be worthy of God, and that can have the wrong attitude. So both camps can come to it with the right attitude, and both camps can come to it with the wrong attitude. So very quickly we want to get caught up in the stuff.
Yep.
Or should I do this or should I do that? And it's really being able to sort of strip it right back. And I think what you can see in this lady and what made it so pure was this pure authenticity of worship.
Yeah, it was her heart.
She wasn't thinking about anything else other than she wanted to just pour out her heart to Jesus. And this happened to be the format that she had available to her to do that.
Yeah.
And so, it's just a very interesting conversation for us to be thinking through around the attitude to which we approach worship.
Yes.
And not getting caught up in the stuff either which way, whether that is that you are extravagant or whether that you do decide to be conservative for, whether it's you decide to save your money on this to put it into something else, So, this had me thinking about all of that sort of things.
And I think that's so true because it is a heart attitude issue rather than the outworking of it. And, Scripture says God looks at the heart, man looks at the outside. And that is just true. Like, even taking out a value judgment on that, it's just a reality. So we look at a big conference like Hillsong, and you all you can look at is the outside, but we don't know necessarily the heart of the people that are behind it. And so that's between them and God. Yeah. And that's kind of where I've had to get on a lot of that stuff, because, then we're having a conversation this morning with Levi McGrath, and a brilliant musician who he goes out to remote areas, and it's beautiful. And I know that for a lot of people, that would be a lot more authentic. And for Levi, it is. But does that discredit what a more full-on band or a more expensive form of worship is? I don't think the two things are in competition to each other if their heart is right before God, and that's up to the individuals and up to us that is engaging in it. Another thing I thought about on that very story, it struck me, I did a bit of, because we've got time, it's one of the things I'm loving about this reading program is that it's short, so you got time to dig around a bit. And when this same story is brought up in Matthew and John, it actually identifies the woman as being Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus. And so I was thinking, wow, the disciples know this lady. Like, how horrific for her. Imagine it's one thing if strangers misunderstand you, or the community criticizes you, but this is like people in your own church having a crack at the way you're worshipping. It would be pretty confronting for her. And I just stopped and thought about that again. We're enjoying this conversation about make yourself the baddie. And I thought, wow, where have I maybe got a little bit critical of people that are in my own world that I know, and I need to, I try really hard not to be critical, and certainly in Generosity Church, we're careful not to criticize what other ministries are doing. It's really between them and God. If someone's out there preaching outright heresy, we'll certainly encourage people to be cautious of it and stay away from it. But outside of that, that's between them and God. That's their ministry. But I wonder whether at times you take liberties with people that you're close with, and just to think, hang on, no, I just want to be encouraging people to be worshippers. And whether it's extravagant or whether it's, so long as they've got the right heart behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Bill Johnson defines religion in the new sense of form without power. And so any time that the form has taken over genuine connection with God, that's when you've gotten off track.
Right.
And so that removes the whole debate of what's the right way to do things. Well, the answer is made in what brings you close to God. When are you connecting with God? How do you connect with God? Where do you find ways to really be empowered by Him? And that's the sort of filter, rather than getting caught up in it. Should we do it this way or that way? And we all fall into it, because then people that are very much trying to get away from that whole thing of, we don't want to be a part of dead religion. But then if you think the solution to that is this louder music, better music, different lights, you haven't changed a single thing.
No, exactly right. And I think certainly that's the thing we need to be careful of in our world. We're unlikely to, come into a worship service where it's just a pipe organ and singing songs from a couple hundred years ago. That's unlikely to happen in our context. But I know particularly if you haven't developed some of those thoughts in our context, it can be really easy to think, because we have some lights and we have guitars, that we're not being religious. Well, hang on. How much do you want to hold on to that? Are you happy to go down to having just an acoustic guitar one day? Are you happy to honour and respect the people that absolutely love that old style worship and it moves them in their spirit? Do you still honour and respect that, or do you automatically accuse that of being religion? Because if you do, you're actually just flipping the whole thing on its head. I've definitely been in that camp for a while, and even my music playlist would show that. There's days when I grew up in a church where every time we had communion we did a hymn. And so some of those old hymns I just remember having as a teenager around the communion table, getting my heart right with God again. Right. And by Monday it's all gone out the window, but I'm on that journey of going, it's just that teenage journey of, goodness me, it's hard enough as a teenager to learning to honour your parents. And so you're also trying to learn to honour God and surrender your will. And so you know, you had this beautiful moment of communion each week and we're singing these hymns. And so I just had some incredible moments where the grace of God began to dawn on me, and this idea that I didn't need to perform, but I could just live out in my relationship with God. So some of that began to, without even necessarily yet having words around it, with these experiences with God around the communion table, worshipping to a hymn. Yeah. And so for me now, there are times when I've got hymns on my playlist, and right next to Elevate and right next to Hillsong.
Yeah.
But there are times when I just want to go back and listen to them, and you know, I can get tears streaming down my face as I just remember the goodness and the grace of God in you.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a great experience for me personally, because it's helped me have a filter on some of this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I love a bit of old school, like Johnny Cash gospel, gospel songs and stuff. Love it.
Well, the old rockers. My dad got me into the old Christian rockers, like Phil Keaggy, Keith Green, Larry Norman. Like, these guys were the beginning of the Christian rock scene. I've still got some vinyls of those guys.
That's awesome. Well, we are joined by Levi McGrath. Thanks for joining us today, mate.
Good to be here, guys.
Awesome
Good morning.
to have you, mate.
It's we're very excited to have you on. We just like getting courageous leaders and courageous people onto this talk show with us, and you're definitely one of them. So, yeah, thanks for coming and getting up nice and early to join us.
No worries.
So I was just wondering, just to start off, would you be able to just give us a bit of an overview of what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I'm a professional Christian musician. I travel around Australia, New Zealand, and beyond each year, sharing in schools and churches predominantly, but I also to meet the needs of the vulnerable in our community, and to go to places, I guess, where a lot of music and ministry doesn't reach. I get into prisons each year around Melbourne and around the country, and especially over the last few years have been reaching into indigenous areas in remote parts of the Northern Territory, where we're taking other professional musicians in to teach music and to help encourage music in locations where it's not readily available. I'll say that.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we'll definitely get into some of that as we chat. And in terms of your childhood, give us a bit of a picture of your childhood growing up.
Yeah, so born in Donald, a tiny little country town in Victoria, kind of blink and you'll miss it town. I grew up all over the place. My dad was a Baptist minister, trained up in New South Wales, was posted down in country Victoria, and we'd spend 3 to 6 months in each town that he'd kind of take over for a while as the interim minister while a church was looking for a pastor, or maybe the pastor was taking long service leave, that kind of thing. So we ended up moving to about 18 different places by the time I was about 12 years old, and we eventually settled in Bendigo, nice big country town in Victoria. And I did my teen years growing up there, did high school, found my way up to uni and studied music, studied contemporary music, doing a bachelor's degree in songwriting, composition, moved to Melbourne where I got married and now live with my 2 beautiful little boys.
Awesome.
Wow. What was that like moving around so much as a kid, Levi?
It's funny, you know, everyone's childhood is normal to them, and it just felt very normal to me. I think to be packing up and moving away, a lot of that apparently was in a caravan. I can't seem to remember that, but we
blocked it.
We had a father, you know, who loved to build, a mum who was very patient, gracious, and kind, and that's all we needed, you know, our family unit. I remember traveling around Australia as a kid, and it just felt very normal to be, you know, even shorter stays in places, moving around the whole country. But we had a really tight-knit family kind of bond and structure. We're all very close and still are to this day.
Yeah, brilliant.
So it's been good.
So when, in the midst of all that moving and living a really interesting and unique life, when did your love of music develop?
It's an interesting question. It was probably later than most, and it grew competitively. So I've always been a competitor, always loved sport. And my sister had picked up piano when I was about 10 years old. She was 2 years older than me. So at 12, she got into the piano, started playing guitar. So I had to jump in as well. So I started playing piano. A couple of years later, she was getting pretty good at guitar, writing her own songs and singing, and being a much more portable instrument. I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. Yep. So play that anywhere. So I had to dive in on guitar, and pretty soon I was better than her at both instruments, and I was pretty happy with that. So I kept pushing, kept pursuing it. Got into a band when I was 14, and we won a couple of Battle of the Bands competitions. My then girlfriend, now wife, came to this big Battle of the Band competition that we won.
Hold up. You were 14.
I would have been 15 when we won this. Yeah. This big Battle of the Bands competition just in Castlemaine, near where I grew up. And I think it was probably that night that I realistically saw a future in music. I thought, well, I love this. God's given me maybe some talent, some skill, some passion in this area. I really started to know what I wanted to do and wanted to be. And I guess it's like a surfer feels on a wave, me on a stage. That's where I've felt most comfortable for nearly 20 years now. I love that feeling. I love that experience. I love being able to express myself and the things that God's put on my heart, even from that young age. I love to write about the things of God and being able to share that with others, even when I felt maybe too nervous or scared to share that, just verbally in conversation, was something I always felt an incredible power to do from stage, and something I've tried to dedicate myself to since then. Yeah,
it gave you a sense of confidence to share yourself.
Definitely, you can be a performer on stage. You can enter a different zone where the music gives you permission. It's a vehicle to really take a powerful message into someone else's life and help them reflect through the music that kind of soothes behind it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Behind the lyric.
So has your sister conceded defeat yet and admitted you're the better musician in the family, or?
Yeah, absolutely. No. She's got a Mariah Carey-esque voice. I'll never sing as well as her. She's a great songwriter as well, and yeah, still was a big hero of mine to this day. She's been through a lot and come out of that as a fantastic mother. She's studying law. Lots to be inspired by. Her
that's
life.
Awesome, man.
Has she ever come on tour with you?
Never, and that will never happen. We don't get along that well.
We're close, but not that close. We're not too close.
Yeah. My wife used to sing with me when we thought that was cute when we first got married. We're all starry-eyed and couldn't be separated. And I remember being in New Zealand, and she could only sing in the key of E. And I thought the concert was going really well. One day, played all these songs in the key of E. And I thought, I'll just whack a capo on. We'll do this one in F sharp. And I start the song. Her part comes in. She grabs her microphone, starts to sing. And in front of a church of about 250 people, she says, "You've changed something."
Yes.
And I keep strumming and say, "Darling, just, keep singing. Here we go, keep singing." And she just stops and says, "No, change it back. Change it back now."
Oh, brilliant.
And that was our last gig together.
That's awesome. So Melissa,
I can't imagine why.
Marriage after that. No.
Yeah. Melissa, my wife, has numerous times asked me to learn how to play music and sing so that we could do a family band, and I'm like, no, because of that very reason. That exact thing will happen.
That's the only reason. Like, you've got the talent.
No, I just can't be bothered gaining the talent.
That's good. And you guys started dating when you were like 14, 15.
Yeah, we started super young. So I'd met her on whoa. Hope you still got me there.
Yeah, we still got you.
Major technical difficulty. Don't wear headphones during interviews. I met her on a Christian camp when I was super young. She was 18 at the time, so she's a little older than me. But she could drive.
Yeah,
and that was the main incentive at the time.
But, bragging rights. Like, come on, 15-year-old going out to an 18-year-old. You were the man.
I felt out of my skin. I was so excited. But we cemented a relationship. It was long distance. She was in Melbourne. I was in Bendigo.
Yep.
I was still doing some growing up, and moved away for uni. I stayed away, and eventually the love was so strong that it brought us back together, and got married soon after university.
Wow, that's a cool story.
Awesome. All right. Well, I might bring us over to the instruments for the Outback. So I'm really interested to hear a bit more about this because, we were chatting before we started the show that I grew up in Carnarvon, and it's the indigenous community's always been something on my heart. And so, so I knew that you had been doing it, and I went and I was looking it up a little bit during the week. But so could you just tell us a little bit about that program?
Sure. So Instruments for the Outback was birthed actually by my drummer. I've been touring with a guy called Andy for more than 10 years, and we're best mates, but we've lived and breathed everything, on the road together through 10-hour car trips to Adelaide and back, on tour around Australia. And we really had both agreed that music was this powerful gift that had brought so much creativity, so much positivity to our lives, and both got us through some difficult times and memories in our lives. And then we'd heard both at about the same time this radio story, just on AM radio, because we're getting so old. We heard this story about indigenous youth, how there was an epidemic of youth suicide in WA and NT about 5 years ago, and it was getting out of control. One suicide would spark another. Another suicide in town would spark a group of others in a neighbouring town. And things had just risen to this point where the Australian government was getting really concerned that their interventions, their programs weren't really working. And we felt that as musicians, we're not development workers, we're not aid workers, but surely we can get involved in these communities. We don't want to lose any more Aussie kids. Right. And these are beautiful indigenous kids that are growing up, maybe feeling no hope, feeling no way out, living with the pain that their ancestors felt, and just not having any way to deal with that kind of emotional burden.
Yeah. So
we decided, well, let's put a fundraiser together. Let's contact a few people we know up in Darwin, see if we can get a name of someone that's working in community. And this name kept popping up of a guy called Roger, who's mid-60s. He lives out in the bush 2 hours south of Darwin, and he just had a heart for Indigenous young people and teaching them music. This guy lives off the smell of an oily rag, gives everything he gets that's any good away. And so we called him up and we said, what if we could raise a few $1,000s and get you some musical instruments to take out to community when you teach these Aboriginal kids? And he said that would be fantastic. That'd be life-changing. And, I've been doing this on my own for so long. I need some support, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we put a fundraiser online, hoping to get a few. Short weeks, we had $20,000.
Oh wow!
And so we're like, this is incredible. This has really got some fire behind it. So we take a team. We put together a team of 15 of the best Christian musos we can find from around the country. We take them up to the Outback, and it's not just the kids that are getting ministered to by the music in the towns and the places that we travel to. It's the team themselves that are just being broken, for seeing poverty firsthand, for seeing kids that have grown up in a cycle of violence and abuse, to seeing what alcohol can do to a town when unchecked. Just seeing the lack of social support in some of these areas was really, really confronting to a lot of us. But I remember one day sitting in a room, just watching in on a djembe class. I facilitate a lot of these sessions, so I'm there just overseeing. And Andy's sitting there drumming with these kids, and they're just loving the sounds they make on drum kits, and the djembe's there. They're all laughing, having a great time. And the teacher that's been working with them for a few years, this lady just burst into tears, and she's really moved by what's going on. I go over and put my arm around her and say, "What's wrong? What's going on?" And she says, "I've never seen these boys smile, let alone laugh." And that just brought it all home to me that, we're not just just bringing a joyous experience to these kids. We're not just trying to recreate their memories, give them something positive to remember for a couple of weeks a year. We're actually trying to give them a form of self-expression, a tool for the future, something that can be life-changing for them, that can get them into worship bands, to get them into songwriting, making music, recording their own music in language, something that's both reinforcing their cultural values and showing them the love of Jesus firsthand. So it's been such a powerful journey for the teams that we take, for the kids, but we're now working in 2 locations. So we've got a location over at Gower Christian School, which is on Elcho Island, 1,000 k's northeast of Darwin. Wow. And then we're 2.5 hours south of Darwin as well, and we're just exploring some new relationships with Palumpa and Port Keats last year. So it's an exciting time, and we're having to look at some really new ways to get involved during COVID-19 as well.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So what instruments do you take out and the kids get to play with, Levi, and experience?
Nylon string guitars are the most popular, like the ones behind me.
Okay.
Because most of them are built in Indonesia, so they know how to stand up against the humidity and the wet season up there. So they cope really well in the heat.
Yes.
So that's the first thing that was really popular. We branched into ukuleles. We've taken electric drum kits. Keyboards are super popular up there. They really love the battery operated keyboards, so they can take them right deep into the bush where there's no power and still have some great music going on. But further from that, some of the goals have really come from the community leaders, from the elders themselves, of what they want and what they want things to look like. So we've gone into Gower and built an entire performance space with a functional PA, a PA desk, training to be able to use it.
Brilliant.
And not blow up the speakers and get a decent mix going, which has been really exciting. Starting to get some lights in so they can put on concerts and have a great time with it. But the biggest thing that came from the elders was we're losing our language. In Elcho Island, the life expectancy is 40 years of age. Wow. So there's not a lot of people, less than 6% of the population that live beyond their 40th birthday because of things like heart disease, kidney failure, diabetes.
Right.
Just adjusting to all this crazy Western food and not having to hunt and fish and plant and grow as it was in the past. But we're seeing language just absolutely devastated, absolutely lost. So they said, if you can find a way to excite the younger generation about our language, about our culture, please go ahead and do that. So we run songwriting workshops and songwriting kind of camps over a week where we ask kids to write songs in their language about the culture around them, about what they do on the weekend, whether it's spearfishing for mud crabs or going, hunting for crocodiles, whatever it is, out in the bush. We get them to express themselves through song. What came out of that was all these gospel songs, worship songs in language. And we've set up a recording studio, which is pretty basic. It's one decent vocal mic, a couple of little speakers, and a computer. But that little station has been so popular, and we've seen dozens of songs coming out of that space that are just flowing with God's heart through that community, and just reinforcing the Christian faith that was already there.
Yes.
Before we got there, but really helping the kids to know and be confident in their own identity as well, in an ever-changing world, which is really dominated by, this new cultures from all over the world that have moved to Australia.
Yeah.
Right.
How if people are wanting to get behind that and help the continuation of that work, is there a way for people to be supporting that? Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's just musicgivelife.org is the website that houses our 2 projects, so instruments for the Outback and instruments for Ethiopia that we run. But this year we're raising funds to get some more laptops, to build some mini recording rigs, to get up there with some extra little keyboards and headphones for the kids so they can start to learn recording practices themselves and widen what they learn, their experience to the outside community. Yeah. But yeah, even during COVID-19, we've found ways to get involved. We can't get there and take the teams there, all get on a plane like normal this year. So we're running a bunch of online lessons and tutorials, from recording to videography, playing bass, drums, guitar. I'm doing vocal lessons, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a really exciting year so far.
Awesome. That's really cool.
And so tell us, Levi, with COVID obviously coming at a difficult time for everybody, but as a musician, sort of certainly eats into what you're trying to do. And you had just launched a new album. How's an album launch in the middle of COVID going for you, mate?
Look, I'm so grateful looking back that I got to do the album launch in my hometown here in Hillsville. And it was really exciting to have all my church friends, my family, wider fans, come along and support the night was fantastic. I got to Alice Springs and I got to Geraldton over in WA, pretty close to Carnarvon there. But really, really amazing time. And then it all got cut short. But things will resume. After this time, we'll give the church some time to kind of bounce back and get back on its feet and back to normal services and away from the Zoom gatherings.
Yes.
But for me, it was a grounding experience that it took me a few weeks to be happy about it. But my album was called Be Here Now, and it still is. But,
you haven't changed the name.
It's all about being in the moment, and the main song, the title track, was written about an experience I had where my son was knocking at the door late one night. I'm there on my laptop working away, planning the next tour, planning the next set list for the next gig that's coming up, and he's said, "Dad, come and play with me before bed." And I've angrily told him, "Mate, go away. Can't you see I'm busy? Get out of here. Stop disturbing me. Stop banging on the door." And about half an hour later, I've come to my senses, shut my laptop lid, and realised, you get kids once when they're young. You get this opportunity to be a dad when they're young only once, and I had to pull my head in, and I wrote a song all about that experience that just hopes to encourage other fathers to be in the moment, to be here now. And I think that's so biblical, to see the time that Jesus spent with his Father, to see the time in the Bible that fathers spent with their sons. I think it's such a special and unique bond to pass on the information, the biblical knowledge, the wisdom that you learn through life to these little ones that are so precious, and time is so short. So I was just so encouraged that night to be able to sit and rest, to not be so busy all the time, to not be rushing from one thing to the next. And that's what this time has been all about for me, of learning to be okay with not doing enough, with not doing as much as I'd usually achieve. And you've met me, Caleb. You've seen me in person. I like to achieve. I like to go out and experience and to travel and to accomplish. But it's been a really big test of my own patience, my character, to slow down.
Yeah, brilliant.
Wow. Now we're going to get you to sing us a song to finish us off, but
Sure.
I do have one final question though before we move into that. Have you ever, other than GC conference, had a whole church chanting "Ooh ah Levi McGrath, ooh ah Levi McGrath"?
Happens all the time. I wish.
Jono,
conference of my life.
That was so much fun having you there. We really enjoyed it.
Classic Jono Williams started that.
Yeah, he did.
It was fantastic. It was fantastic. I've never been more embarrassed though than when your wife Renee taps me on the shoulder and says, "Look, we had a family from Africa going to get up, but they couldn't. I know you've been to Africa. Do you have a song that you could sing, maybe in Swahili or something?" And I did, and I got to be part of the international.
It was brilliant.
But it was great. It was great.
That's one of
Lots
the things we
fun.
loved about you, Levi. We're like, this guy's super talented, but he just like gets in and gets on with it like he's one of us. This is awesome.
I felt like one of you. I did. I felt like one of you. It was very good.
Awesome. Hey, mate, thanks for joining us. We'd love to take it out with a song. Why don't you show us what you got?
Awesome. This is an old tune. It's called "Beautiful Day," and it's a reflection of the cross. You know, we're not too far away from Easter, but it sings of Jesus' love for us. The fact that he put us first, died for us, and sacrificed so much for us. Wonderful cross, chosen for me, bearing thy losses on Calvary. Beautiful Savior, nailed in your feet. You took the shame from me. What a beautiful day when you took my place. Oh, the kindness of love I could not replace. You talked to the fishermen down by the sea, and you taught them to fish for me. No greater love has any man than to lay down his life for his friends. What a beautiful day when you took my place. Oh, the kindness of love I could not replace. How can I stand here with you? I can hardly bear to move. What a beautiful day when you took my place. Oh, the kindness of love I could not repay. What a beautiful day when you took my place. Oh, the kindness of love I cannot replace. Beautiful day. Beautiful day.
Yeah.
Bless you guys.
Awesome,
Thanks for having us.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, mate. Thank you for this morning, and thanks so much for everything that you're doing around our country with your ministry. And yeah, we just pray that God continues to bless it and that you just keep going as you've been doing.
Thanks so much.
Hey, Levi, one quick last question before you go. Be Here Now. How do we get hold of a copy of it, mate?
Yeah, just check it out on my website. I've got physical copies for the old school ones of us at levimcgrath.com.au, and you can download it through Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, all that. So
Legend.
yeah,
Awesome.
jump on board.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Levi.
mate. So thanks for listening to the Courageous Influence Talk Show. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, on Spotify. You can find us on the Courageous Influence Talk Show podcast. And you can also find us at Generosity Church Bathurst, Facebook and Instagram. So we'll see you around. Bye.
Hooray.